Oh, wow. Hey, much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Hope you guys are doing okay. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're healthy. Hope you're, getting through in this matrix. Appreciate you guys making the time to be here. Today, it shouldn't be too long, but we're going to just quickly read from another part of a book we've been reading. Okay, this series is called Sacred Mysteries Among the Mayas and the Quiches, just like the book, as you guys can see here. 11,500 years ago, it says. Their relation to the sacred mysteries of Egypt, Greece, Chaldea, and India. Freemasonry in times anterior to the Temple of Solomon. Illustrated by Augustus Le Plongeon. This is from 1886, okay, from 1886, and we go to the part where we left off last time, okay, and he starts talking about the cross. We're on page 128. It says here, the cross is another sacred symbol, much reverenced by all nations, civilized and semi-civilized, ages before the establishment of Christianity. All right, we've broken this down in so many ways. You know, the cross, eventually it was used in Christianity, but it's a lot more ancient, all right, than Christianity. Ages before the establishment of Christianity. And although we find representations of it in almost every part of the world, from its mere delineation scratched on the rock to the stately temples and admirably hewn caves of Elephanta in India, still nowhere do we learn of its origin. Even though all these ancient cultures and the supposed old world have it, right? They never have an origin story, just like everything else, guys. How we've been breaking that down. It's all just mythology or a legacy picked up from some inheritance, right? There's no origin. There are several varieties of crosses, but all may be traced back to the primitive form, which resembles the Latin cross. Among the earliest type known on the eastern continent is the cruz ansata, called the key of the Nile. It was the symbol of symbols among the Egyptians, the Phoenicians, and the Chaldees, being the emblem of the life to come. All right, so what do we know, right, about all those three nations? First of all, he said Egyptians. And we're going to go to a book that we've been referencing on this series. So it's talking about Freemasonry and so-called ancient Egypt and all that. Just to remind everybody where ancient Egypt really was. And we're going to get it from the horse's mouth again. A Masonic book. It says here, Ancient Mystic Oriental Masonry. Its teachings, rules, laws, and present usages which govern the order of the present day, true Masonry and the Universal Brotherhood of Man are one, it says, by Dr. R. Swinburne Clymer. All right, author of the Rosicrucians, huh? He's probably a Rosicrucian too. So we're going to go to a specific page of this book. All right, and just to remind everybody that, as they're saying here, the Freemasons, we are not indebted to either ancient Egypt for either religion or masonry, but to America. It is a fact that at Memphis, Egypt, in the pyramids, under the guidance of the kings, the mystic rites of masonry were worked many thousands of years ago. But at that time, pay attention, Egypt and the continent of America were one and the same. In America, rediscovered in the 15th century and repopulated in the 17th, was recovered Egypt and the Promised Land, or the land of the constellation of the Eagle, okay? What was recovered? Egypt and the Promised Land, the biblical lands, all right? America and Egypt, thousands of years ago, were one and the same, okay? Were one and the same. And America was known to the mystics as Atlantis, okay? As Atlantis. And when that ruin befell, was the seat of the greatest empire that has ever existed, and its irresistible armies were terrorizing all of Europe and Asia, okay? The greatest empire ever, America, known to the mystic as Atlantis, okay? And everything in the bottom here says all that is sublime in the prehistoric past centers upon America, Atlantis, okay? / Atlantis. It will be seen that the people of the eagle on the Nile being descended from the original people of the eagle on this continent, right here in America. The twain are one, and that prehistoric America was the original Egypt. Again, prehistoric America was the original Egypt or Eagle Land prior to the mighty dispensation in the days of Peleg, when the earth was divided and the great globe itself was nearly rent asunder. Okay, America, Atlantis, firstborn among the continents. America has been falsely denominated the New World. Falsely denominated the New World. So ancient Egyptians, right? We go back to the other book, Sacred Mysteries Among the Mayas and the Quiches by Augustus Le Plongeon. It was talking about that the cross is the symbol of symbols amongst the Egyptians. Now we know, yeah, ancient Americans, okay. Phoenicians, seafaring people coming out of the true promised land. It just told us that was recovered in America. Phoenicians coming out of America, seafaring people. And the Chaldees, yeah, ancient Ireland, huh? Ancient Ireland is connected to ancient America too, or so-called Atlantics, as the mystics know it, right? It says being an emblem of the life to come. The cross. It was placed on the breast of the deceased, sometimes as a simple T on the fulcrum of a cone, sometimes represented as supported on a heart. It is also seen adorning the breasts of statues and statuettes in Palenque, Copan, and other ancient cities of Guatemala, Nicaragua, and various localities of Central America. Everywhere it was associated with water. The cross, water. In Babylon, it was the emblem of water deities. You guys hear that? In Egypt, Assyria, and Britain, it was emblematical of creative power and eternity. In India, China, and Scandinavia, of heaven and immortality. In Mayaks, of rejuvenescence and freedom from physical suffering. The cross as a symbol was placed on the breast of the initiate after his new birth was accomplished in the Bacchic and Eleusinian mysteries, all right? How they go into their secret societies, ancient secret societies. Rimisol and Torquemada assert in their respective works that when in 1519 the Spaniards under Hernán Cortés landed at the island of Cozumel, they found crosses, right? They found crosses here in America, which the natives worshipped as gods in their temples, according to them. That's what they were interpreting. After them, many writers, on their authority, have affirmed the same thing. This, however, seems to have been a mistake. Bernal Diaz del Castillo, who accompanied Cortés, does not mention the existence of such symbols in Cozumel, but emphatically says that Cortés, having ordered the destruction of the idols that were in the sanctuaries, caused an image of the Virgin Mary to be placed in their stead, and near it a wooden cross, made by two of his carpenters, to be erected, recommending the natives to take great care of them when he left. That's according to the other guy. But Cortés said there was crosses there, and we already know you can find it all in their codices and in their stone structures, crosses all over the place before Europeans. Dr. Pedro Sanchez de Aguilar, another of the early writers, maintains that the stone crosses found afterward in the island were made in imitation of that of Cortés, and Bishop Landa, although a most zealous missionary intent on converting the Aborigines to the Catholic faith, does not mention the existence of crosses in Cozumel before the advent of the Spaniards, a fact he would certainly have taken advantage of in his predication of the gospel, and would not have failed to mention in his work, had he been satisfied that the symbol really existed. There can be no doubt that in Mayaks, in very remote ages, the cross was an emblem pertaining to the sacred mysteries. No external vestiges of the symbol are to be found among the remains of the temples and palaces of the Mayas, such as those seen at Palenque and other places of Central America. Only one image of a perfect cross have I ever met with in the ancient edifices of Yucatan besides the ground plan of the sanctuary at Uxmal. It forms part of the inscription carved on the lintel of the doorway of the east facade of the palace at Chichen. Still, tradition tells us that the cross was symbolical of the god of rain. If so, they made no image of it, nor did they celebrate any festival in honor of it at the time of the conquest, but held it simply as a notion of their forefathers. The ancient Maya astronomers had observed that at a certain period of the year, at the beginning of our month of May, that owes its name to the goddess Maya, the goddamn mother of the gods, the Southern Cross, appears perfectly perpendicular above the line of the southern horizon. This is why the Catholic Church celebrates the feast of the exaltation of the Holy Cross on the third day of that month, which it has consecrated particularly to the Mother of God, the Good Lady, the Virgin Maria, or the goddess Isis, anthropomorphized by Bishop Cyril of Alexandria. In all localities situated within the 12th and 23rd degree of latitude north, about the beginning of January, the dry season sets in and no more rain falls during several months. In May and April, in the countries like Yucatan, where there is no water on the surface of the ground, all things become parched. The trees and shrubs lose their leaves. Nature looks desolate. All living beings thirst for a drop of moisture. The birds and other wild creatures, mad with thirst, lose their characteristic shyness and venture near the haunts of man, imperiling their lives in search of water. Death, for want of it, seems to threaten all creation. But four bright stars appear in the south. A shining cross stands erect above the southern horizon. It is the heavenly messenger that brings good tidings to all. For it announces that the floodgates of heaven soon shall be opened, that the so longed for rain will shortly descend from on high, and with it joy and happiness, new life to all creatures. Man hails with thankful heart, welcomes with songs of gladness, this brilliant harbinger of the life to come. For indeed it is a God for him, the God of rain, that rejuvenates nature, frees man and all other creatures from physical sufferance, brings felicity to them. Heaven, therefore, and with renewed life, immortality. It is not the creative power that is eternally renovating and revivifying all things on the surface of the earth? Is it not? He's asking. Is it then strange that all nations in every age should have worshipped the cross as a symbol of the life to come and immortality, and held it in so great veneration? It must be remembered that all the civilized nations in the lands of the West, the mythical lands of the West, in the Egyptian mythology, that was the Americas, and in the eastern continent, also America, dwelt in latitudes where the constellation known as the Southern Cross is visible during the month of May, and that the first showers soon follow its apparition above the horizon. From these, of course, it was transmitted to the others further north that accepted the symbol without understanding its meaning, and in after times many speculations have been indulged in concerning its origin. You guys hear what they're telling you here? That this Southern Cross appears more to us here in the Americas, and especially in May, right before the rains come. Like the Southern Cross appears in the skies as like a sign of that rains are coming. So imagine this is what he's saying, associated to life and rain and rejuvenation and all that, and that's happening here in the Americas. So how do these other people have all the symbol of the cross and they don't know what's the origin? That's what he's letting you know. Says, but the unsophisticated natives in the midst of their forests today rejoice at the sight of the Southern Cross, and prepared to sow their fields. So the Indians did, did the same thing. They saw the cross and, oh, yep, the rain is coming. The origin and meaning of the mystical, you know, they show like a T, but they mean the cross, the symbol right here, the Tao, right? That symbol of hidden wisdom. Wow, in parentheses, hidden wisdom. As it has been denominated by scholars of our days, found on all Egyptian monuments. What Egyptians? In the temples, in the hands of the gods, in the tombs, on the breasts of the mummies, also met with in the ancient edifices of Mayaks, and on the statues and altars in the temples at Palenque, has given rise to many speculations on the part of modern savants. They have not reached yet any conclusion, although its name Tao, right, as I just said, says plainly that it is nothing more or less than a representation of the god of rain, the Southern Cross. Effectively, Tao, listen, guys, Tao is a Maya word composed of three primitives: T, here, A, or Ha, Ta, or water, and U, month, which translates freely means this is the month for water. This is the month for water. Tao in Maya, guys, hence for the resurrection of nature, for the new life to come. Christianity, the complex form of the mystical cross, which is formed of a cone with two arms extending, one each side, and an oval placed immediately above them, has been denominated by the Egyptologist Cruz Ansata. It is not of Egyptian origin, though. Okay? You guys hear that? It has its prototype in the conoidal pillar, surmounted by a spear, used by the Babylonians as a symbol of life and death. Death being but the beginning or nursery of life. This emblem was only a reminiscence of the Yakshi, the sacred tree of the Mayas, under the roots of which the natives assert it's always to be found a source of pure cold water. Alright? The trunk of the Yakshi, from the foot to the top, forms a perfect cone from which the main branches shoot in an horizontal direction. Its leafy top, seen from distance, presents the appearance of a half spear of verdure. The cone, the Tao, and the Cruz Ansata were, for those initiated to the mysteries, the same symbol emblematical of deity, of the life to come, of the dual powers of fertility. The Mayas and other peoples of Central America, in the sculptures or paintings, always represented their sacred trees with two branches shooting horizontally from the top of the trunk, thus presenting the appearance of a cross or a Tao. Okay? And here's a little drawing of one of their glyphs. This is what they're telling you. This is the same symbol ancient Egypt has, of a palm tree and a bird on top, for its origin and creation. I have videos on all this, right? So as you guys can see, this is what they're talking about. It says from a Mexican manuscript in the British Museum. It says, in straying apparently so far from the main object of these pages, and tracing to their true origin the primitive traditions of mankind, and many of the religious symbols common to all the civilized nations of antiquity, by dispelling the myths that have accumulated around them in the long vista of ages, my aim has been to show that they all emanated from one and the same source, and that this source was the country of Mayaks and the lands of the West. Okay, lands of the West. He's letting you know the mythological lands of the West and Egyptian mythology is Mayaks, the country of the Mayaks, or America, right? The Maya country. Ancient sacred mysteries have been celebrated in the temples of Egypt, right? Again, ancient America, right? Chaldea, Ireland, and India. What India? What India, right? India Superior, North America? From ages so remote that it is no longer known by whom or where they were first instituted. Because you've been talking about them ancient America the whole time. Herodotus tells us that the daughters of Danaus instituted the Thesmophoria in honor of the goddess Ceres. And Ceres is a corn deity, guys, remember from my corn videos. An imitation of the mysteries celebrated in Egypt in honor of Isis. All right, so it's all the same stuff. They're copying each other and just changing the names up, but they all duplicated it from ancient Americas, basically what we've been trying to show you here, and he's corroborating. And taught them to the Pelasgic women that Eumolpus, king of Ulysses, instituted in his own country the Eleusinian mysteries on his return from Egypt, from ancient America, where he had been initiated by the priests as Orpheus, who founded in Tracia those that bear his name, but who taught the rites of initiation, the use of the symbols and their meanings to the hierophants of Egypt. Again, but who, he's saying, taught the rites of initiation, the use of the symbols and their meaning to the hierophants of Egypt, to the Magi of Chaldea, to the gymnosophists of India. Who taught them all these ancient cultures, right? And a lot of those were all, associated to ancient America either way. The mode of initiation, the use of the same symbols, with an identical signification ascribed to them, by peoples living so far apart, whose customs and manners were so unlike, whose religion, so far at least as external practices were concerned, differed so widely, showed that these mysteries originated with one people, and were carried to and promulgated among the others, as we do not find it mentioned anywhere that they originated either with the Egyptians, the Chaldees, or the Hindus, okay? It didn't originate with these cultures as people think, where they are today. And we have seen that their primitive traditions have been derived from the history of the early rulers of Mayaks. That's where they're getting it. Listen to what he's telling you guys. All these ancient practices, religions, beliefs, deities, everything, they're copying ancient America, so-called Atlantis, the rulers of Mayaks. They're getting it from that history. It is not natural that we should look for the institution of the mysteries among the Mayas, since we find the same mysterious symbols used by the initiates in all other countries, carved on the walls of the temples of their gods and the palaces of their kings. Shouldn't we be looking there? Their history may afford the clue to the original meaning of said symbols, as their language has given us the true signification of the words used by the celebrating priests to dismiss the initiates in the Eleusinian mysteries, or by the Brahmins at the end of their religious ceremonies, right? He broke that down, how a lot of these Maya words are the ones they're using in these ancient old world cultures as religious words that they don't even know what it means or the origin to. And it's actually Maya words they've been using the whole time. So what he's letting you know. And as it has revealed the so long hidden mystery of the mystical Tao. All right, the origin of the Tao, guys. You understand what he's letting you know here? Even for the so-called Hebrews. That sacred mysteries were celebrated from times immemorial in the temples of Mayaks, Xibalba, Nachan, Palenque of today, Copan, and other places of Central America. There can be no doubt, since besides the symbols sculptured on the walls of the temples and palaces, in two distinct instances, we see the rites and the trials of initiation described in the Popol Vuh. And as these rites and trials were identical with those to which the applicants to initiation in the mysteries of Egypt, Greece, Chaldea, and India were subjected, we are justified in seeking in Mayaks for the causes that may have induced the founders of the sacred mysteries to select the odd numbers 3, 5, and 7 instead of the even 2, 4, and 6 for mystic numbers. All right, so now they're going over the mystic numbers, but you guys understood what he just said. They're grabbing all that from the Mayas, from the old world, right? The true old world. These symbols, these initiations, and they're all the same. The same initiations that they practiced in ancient Egypt that they write about in their Book of the Dead and all that. That's the exact same thing the Popol Vuh that people were doing here in ancient America. Okay? It says here the symbolization of number 3 may possibly be accounted for in two different ways. One is suggested by the scepter of Poseidon, that Plato says was the first king of Atlantis, and is represented by the Greek mythologists as being son of Kronos. All right, Atlantis, But America is, to the mystics, Atlantis is the same place. Atlantis is America. So Poseidon, the first king of Atlantis, in America, right? In America. And is represented by the Greek mythology as being a son of Kronos, his three-pronged trident being an allusion to the three great islands that formed his kingdom, North and South America and Atlan, that now lies buried under the waves of the Atlantic Ocean. Wow. The emblem placed in the hands of Vul, the god of the atmosphere, in the Chaldean mythology, found also in those of the Hindu gods, may likewise represent the three worlds of great regions that the Egyptian and Maya hierogrammatists designed by the characters, and this is the symbol right here, looks like a crown or water, in the hieroglyph for the name of the lands of the West. All right, that was the glyph where the kings are, the crown, the lands of the West, America, which the latter also figured as the sacred tree with three branches. All right, and you see this glyph right here by the Maya with the three, threes up. A simile of which we find in Scandinavia in the three roots of the sacred ash Yggdrasil, mystic world tree, and the three heavens, and the three worlds whose destruction by water was prophesied by Vishnu. The deification of the world, composed of three parts forming a great whole, may have been the origin of the Trimurti or triune God, so prevalent among the ancient nations of antiquity, and probably led to the mystification of number three. We find it symbolized all over the earth in every nation. We see it in Mayaks and the three platforms on which are raised the most ancient edifices, in the three rooms that formed the temple where the mysteries were performed, in the three steps that led to the first or lower platform, in all sacred edifices, in the 21 meters, 3 times 7 of all the principal pyramids in Yucatan, in the three concentric circles of the zodiac. We meet with it constantly in India, in the Vyahiritis, or three sacred words, the three ornaments of saranas, the three principal classes, the three ways of salvation, the three fetters of the soul, or gunas, the three eyes in Siva's forehead, the three strands of the sacred cord, worn by the initiates of the three principal classes, the three letters of the sacred word Aum. In Egypt, the three-pronged flagellum of Osiris, the triple phallus carried in procession at the festival of the Pamilia in honor of the birth of Osiris, and also the triads as likewise in Chaldea. All right, they tell you symbolization of three. Another way of accounting for the mystification of number three is by taking heed of the indication of Orpheus, Plato, Proclus, and other Greek philosophers who had been admitted to the participation of the secrets communicated in the mysteries to those worthy of being entrusted with them. They tell us that the three intellects of the Demiurgos, or the Demiurges, of the triple deity were the three kings. The three kings. The author of the Troano manuscript, right? So this is a Mexican ancient manuscript, relates at some length the history of the three sons of King Khan. All right, we're talking about the real King Khan and his three sons, and of the troubles that arose among them when, after the death of their father, the reins of the government fell into their hands. Of that fact, a faint tradition very much distorted seems to have still existed among the aborigines of Central America at the time of the Spanish conquest. For Bishop Landa states, that is, was said that once upon a time 3 lords, brothers, governed the country together. Those 3 brothers, sons of King Khan, are realities. All right? These are real people. Guys, this is not just mythology. Personages who have certainly lived a mundane existence, since we not only have their portraits, their weapons and their ornaments, but also their mortal remains. They found their bodies in burials, guys. They recall vividly the three sons of Adam, the three sons of Seb, and the three sons of Kronos. The author of the Troano manuscript informs us that the members of the family of King Khan were deified after their death and worshipped in temples, the ruins of which still exist buried in the depths of the forest of Yucatan under a shroud of verdure. It is not at all improbable that K, the elder brother and high pontiff, having instituted with his father the sacred mysteries, took as symbol of the various degrees into which they divided them the number of the members of their family in order to perpetuate their name and history through the coming ages. This explanation seems the more plausible if we remember that Eusebius tells us that the Egyptians, or ancient Americans, represented the supreme deity under the shape of a serpent, right? Just like ancient Americans. Khan Hel, right? In the Khan dynasty of America, come on now. That was as superior to the triads as the father is to his children and whom he rejoices. Says numero dos impare gaudet. In this connection, the three Huangdi of Chinese mythological times might also be mentioned. They too had the shape of serpents. Among the ancient civilized nations of the eastern continents, number 5 was also considered mystic. Frequent mention is made of it in their sacred books. In China, it occupies a conspicuous place among the celestial or perfect numbers, as 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 are called in the Wai King or canonical book of changes, a very ancient work, so highly esteemed by the wise philosopher Confucius or Kong Fu Tse, that he was seldom seen without it. There we read of the 5 elements: water, fire, wood, metal, and earth, of the 5 kinds of grain, of the 5 colors: black, red, green or blue, yellow, and white, of the 5 tastes: salt, bitter, sour, acid, and sweet, of the 5 tones in music, of the 5 relations of life between men, those between a king and his ministers, a father and his children, a husband and his wife, elder and younger brothers, and between friends of the 5 virtues: philanthropy, uprightness, decorum, prudence, fidelity, of the 5 organs of the body: kidneys, heart, liver, lungs, and spleen, of the 5 changdi, or elementary generations, of the 5 parts that form the heavens, of the 5 seasons of the year, of the 5 genii that govern the 5 elements, of the 5 principal mountains of the empire, of the 5 tutelary mountains. In India, number 5 is also very prevalent in things pertaining particularly to psychological conceptions or religious observances. So they speak of the 5 organs of intelligence, by means of which the external objects are perceived, of the 5 organs of action, the 5 elements, the 5 great oblations, of the 5 great sacrifices, the 5 great fires, etc. In Mayaks, right, in America, it was likewise a mystic number, since we find this symbol, right? Doesn't that look like the symbol of the 5 in dominoes or in a dice, right? In a dice. Look at that. Where did they get that from? The Mayas. Wow. Carved at each end of the southern apartment in the edifice consecrated to the celebration of the sacred mysteries, right? They got it on their buildings. It appears in the number of steps leading from the country yard or terraces to the principal apartments in the house of the governor, the palace of King Khan, all right, and other edifices at Uxmal and in other buildings. It is a number particularly set apart for the second of the three platforms that compose the base on which all the ancient temples and palaces of the Mayas are raised. In the rites of modern Freemasonry, it is still the sacred number related to the second degree. In the Troano manuscript, the legends of all the compartments into which the work is divided, as in chapters, are composed of 5 characters to indicate that said legends are the headings, that is, Ho'ol, the beginning, the head. This number may have become sacred in the mysteries among the Mayas in remembrance of the number of the children of King Khan, for besides his 3 sons, Ke, Ak, and Ko, he had, by his wife So, or Sok, 2 daughters, Mu and Nikte. Remember Queen Mu and Ko, Isis, Osiris, whose names bear a striking resemblance to Tamau, Mu, one of the names of Isis. Listen, and Nike, her sister, one of the names of Isis, Tamu, Mu. Look at that, Mu, Mao, Mu is the same. That's where they get in the story of Isis. When we talk about real people, when we talk about Queen Mu. So King Khan, by his wife Sok, had 5 children, just as Seb had by his wife Nut in Egypt. Like, listen, they copied, this is where they copied this stuff from. These beings, Aroeris, Set, Osiris, Isis, and Nike, or Nike, right? Nike, just like the company, huh? Now you know where they're getting their names. Strange coincidence, right? They all had 5 kids. Strange coincidence, he says, that may, however, give us a knowledge of the origin of the mystification of number 5. Continuing, it says here, 7 seems to have been the sacred number par excellence among all civilized nations of antiquity. Why? This query has never been satisfactorily answered. Each separate people has given a different explanation, according to the peculiar tenets of their religion. That it was the number of numbers for those initiated to the sacred mysteries, there can be no doubt. Pythagoras, who had borrowed his ideas on numbers from the Egyptians, calls it the vehicle of life, containing body and soul, since it is formed of a quaternary, that is, wisdom and intellect, and trinity, or action and matter. Emperor Julian in Matrem and in Oratio expresses himself thus: were I to touch upon the initiation into our secret mysteries which the Chaldees baptized respecting the 7-rayed God, lighting up the soul through him, I should say things unknown to the rabble, very unknown, but well known to the blessed Thurgist. Whatever that knowledge may have been, and their esoteric explanation of the cause of the mystification of number 7 can only be surmised today, but it is not improbable that it was to be found in some event in the early history of the race whose traditions we find scattered broadcast over the earth. We have seen that the family of King Khan was composed of 7 members, who became rulers of the 7 cities that bear their names, the ruins of which still exist in the forests of Yucatan, and by the beauty and richness of the ornamentation, the massiveness and finish of the walls of their temples and palaces excite the admiration of the beholder. These personages, deified after their death, have been worshipped in various countries, and are yet in some under different names. May not the remembrance of the existence of these 7 ancient rulers of Mayaks have been the origin of the tradition of the 7 divine rulers of Egypt, of the 7 Manos that, according to the Brahmins, govern the world in the night of times, of the 7 Rishis, or holy personages who assisted them, of the 7 princes of the Persian court, and the 7 counselors of the king, of the 7 Ameshapans, or first angels, of the 7 great gods of the Assyrians, or the 7 primitive gods regarded by the Japanese as their ancestors and said by them to have governed the world during an incalculable number of years, of the 7 Karibi, worshipped by the Pelasgians at Lemos or Lemnos and Samothracia, the seven great gods and the theogony of the Nahuatls? He's asking, right? Do we not see a simile of the Akchapat or seven-headed serpent of the Mayas, totem of their seven primitive rulers, that is, of the seven members of King Khan's family, in the seven-headed heavenly serpent on which rests Vishnu, the Indian creator, that corresponds to the Egyptian Kenneth or the Mehen Kanhel of the Mayas? It's all the same. See, they're copying it from that. Or again in the seven-rayed god Heptactis, of which the Emperor Julian was so reluctant to speak. It would seem that the duration of certain religious festivals was fixed to commemorate the existence on earth of these seven primitive gods or rulers, the tradition of which we find in all countries where we meet with vestiges of the Mayas, exactly where the Mayas went. So we see the 7 days of the festival of the Eleusinian mysteries, the 7 days of the festival in honor of the bull Apis, a symbol of Osiris, the 7 days of the Feast of the Tabernacles. The septenary system was also adopted for the same purpose, no doubt. In Mayaks, since we find the 7 cities dedicated to each of the members of King Khan's family, the 7 pyramids that adorned the city of Uxmal, the 7 turrets that ornamented the south facade of the north wing of King Khan's palace at Uxmal, each turret inscribed with the name of one of the members of his family, those dedicated to the females being on the east end of the wing. The 7 gradients into which is divided the third or uppermost of the 3 platforms that serve as a substructure to the temples and palaces, the 7 superimposed gradients forming all the pyramids, maybe they do mean pyramids, calling to mind the 7 terraces of the Temple of the 7 Lights at Borsippa, just like that temple, right? The most perfect form of Chaldee temple tower, right? They're just copying it from the Maya temples. And the pyramid degrees at Saqqara, although in the Egyptian pyramid, the gradients are more numerous. So, the pyramid of Saqqara, we know that's a step pyramid, right? As ancient Americans influenced that or built it. The 7 rooms built on the west side of the conical mound that supports the temple in which the mysteries were performed at Uxmal, each room again being dedicated to one of the members of King Khan's family, the bust of their person to whom it was consecrated being affixed over the doorway. The 7 courses of the stones used in the construction of the walls and of the triangular arches that form the ceilings of the rooms. The same system prevails in the arrangement of the Grand Gallery in the center of the Great Pyramid at Gizeh in Egypt. In that monument, as in all the antique edifices of Mayaks, the proportional scale followed by the architects in the drawing of their plans is in accordance with the numbers 3, 5, 7, and their multiples. The predilection of the nations of antiquity, in which the sacred mysteries were celebrated, for number 7 appears in many ways. The 7 days that the rainfall that produced the deluge lasted, according to the Chaldeans, is reproduced in the 7 days of the prophecy of the deluge by Vishnu to Satiravata, as we read of it in the Bhagavata Purana, and the 7 days of the prophecy of the same event made by the Lord to Noah according to Genesis, on account of the 7 days of rainfall. The Babylonian priests used 7 bases in the sacrifices, and in the hierarchy of Mazdaism, the 7 Maruts, or geni of the winds, the 7 rounds of the ladder in the cave of Mitra. The Aryans had the 7 horses that drew the chariot of the sun, the 7 apris, or shapes of the flame, the 7 rays of Agni, the 7 steps of Buddha at his birth. The Egyptians had divided their nation into 7 classes, the week into 7 days. According to them, the creation was completed in 7 days. Among the Hebrews, we find the 7 lamps of the ark, and of Zacharias' vision, the 7 branches of the golden candlestick, the 7 days of the feast of the dedication of the temple, the 7 years of plenty, and the 7 years of famine. In the Christian dispensation, the 7 churches, with the 7 angels at their head, the 7 golden candlesticks, the 7 heads of the beast that rose from the sea, the 7 seals of the book, the 7 trumpets of the angels, the 7 vials full of the wrath of God, the 7 last plagues of Apocalypse. In Greek mythology, the 7 heads of the Hydra killed by Hercules, the 7 islands sacred to Proserpine, mentioned by Proclus, the prevalence of 7 as a mystic number among the inhabitants of the Western continent is not less remarkable. Right? In the Americas, it frequently occurred in the Popol Vuh. We find it besides the 7 families said by Sahagún and Clavigero to have accompanied the mystical personage named Wotan, the reputed founder of the great city of Nakan, right, identified by some with Palenque, and the 7 caves from which the ancestors of the Nahuals are reported to have emerged, in the 7 cities of Cibola, described by Coronado and Niza, the site of which has been accurately fixed by Mr. Frank Cushion, in the immediate neighborhood of the village of the Sunyi, in the 7 Antilles, in the 7 heroes who we are told escaped the deluge. Can it be maintained that this acceptation of 7 as a mystic number by nations so heterogeneous and living so far apart and from the remotest ages is purely accidental? The origin of its mystification has never been explained. It has been transmitted to us by our predecessors, who themselves had accepted it from theirs, without knowing why it was made by the sacred number of the 3rd degree and the rites of initiation into Freemasonry. Right? That's where they get the 3rd degree. True. And receiving the degree, the initiated are told the esoteric meaning attached to it in modern times. But this meaning does not give the origin of its mystification. In fact, it is an invention of our days. They made it up. What they're saying, oh, this is the origin, is all made up, but they're telling people that it was the sacred number of the highest degree of the sacred mysteries in Mayas is evident. We have seen that 3 was the number of the male children of King Khan, 5 that of his sons and daughters, 7 was consequently that of the members of the whole family. It is not therefore improbable that to commemorate that fact, 7 was made the sacred number of the 3rd degree of their sacred mysteries, and that this was the origin of its mystification. In these pages, I have presented without commentaries a few of the facts that 12 years researches among the ruins of the antique temples and palaces of the Mayas, a knowledge of their language still spoken by their descendants, and in some places, as in the vicinity of Petén, in all its pristine purity, the deciphering of certain mural inscriptions, the study of the sacred book of the Quiches, and the interpretation of passages in the Toronto manuscript have disclosed to me concerning the history, civilization, cosmogonical conceptions, religious tenets, and practices of the ancient inhabitants of Yucatan, all right? He's telling you, hey, I put a lot of research, dedication, and I'm telling you, why am I concluding this based off all this stuff right here that he just said? He did boots on the ground, everything. He was the archaeologist. He found things for the country. They have his artifacts and museums today. He put in the work. He's letting you know of the ancient inhabitants of the Yucatan. It is for you now, all right? All of you guys listening right now, the reader, to judge if such facts are worthy your consideration and of the truthfulness of my assertion that a knowledge of the history of the primitive dwellers in these lands of the West, all right, in these lands of the West, the mythical lands of the West from the ancient Egyptian mythology, was always talking about the Americas, guys. I mean, if you just know that rewrites history, guys. Like, listen, it will help to raise the veil. It will help you raise the veil that has covered during so many centuries the origin of the first traditions of mankind. Okay, it was all here in the Americas, in the true old world. Although in the first annual report of the Executive Committee of the Archaeological Institute of America, we read that the study of American archaeology relates indeed to the monument of a race that never attained to a high degree of civilization and that has left no trustworthy records of continuous history. This is what he's quoting. He's quoting the hijack. He's like, look what they're saying in the first edition of the Archaeological Institute of America, that there's no high degree of civilization here. That's what they were telling people. It was a race whose intelligence was for the most part of low order, whose sentiments and emotions were confined within a narrow range, and whose imagination has never quickened to find expression of itself in poetic or artistic forms of beauty. From what it was or what it did, nothing is to be learned that has any direct bearing on the progress of civilization. And he ends the quote. So he just quoted, guys, listen, he just quoted the Archaeological Institute of America, the first annual report that they wrote. This is what they said. You see the hijack? Oh, there's nothing to learn here. They weren't advanced. Don't worry about it. And then Leplajon says, with all due respect, and we say, with all due respect for the learning of the gentlemen who have attached their names to so astounding an assertion, I beg to differ from their opinion expressed so emphatically. I differ because I have seen and photographed the constructions left by the mighty races that have preceded us on this continent. He's like, I've been there. I've seen their architecture. This is advanced. I've seen their civilization. It was advanced. They have not. Those other people judging and writing those reports, they haven't done what he has done. They've never gone to Mexico and done archaeological work. You understand, guys, when they're writing this stuff in the 1800s, he did. Leplajon did go, because I have studied for years in situ, right, on location, these monuments that attest to the high civilization of their builders. They have not. All right, all those people making up stuff, writing all that stuff, they've never done the archaeological work. Because I have learned the language in which they have consigned part, at least, of their history in inscriptions carved on stones, and read some of said inscriptions. They have not. They haven't done that stuff. Just like Pan-Africans, they haven't researched none of this stuff. Indeed, on this continent, not far from New Orleans, exist the relics of past generations, which are as interesting, if not more so of those of Egypt, Babylonia, and Greece, and Italy, as deserving the attention of all students of archaeology, of history, of ethnology, and philology. All right? All the ologies, man. That's what we do here in this channel, all those ologies. We go into the research. It is time yet to save from utter destruction the last records of ancient American history. We got to save this history, guys, that are crumbling every day more and more and are being destroyed by the hand of ignorance and cupidity, right? He wrote this in 1886. He's letting you know they're deliberately destroying ancient American history. They're literally doing it. A few years more and all intelligible traces of them will have disappeared. That's what happened. That's literally what happened, guys. This never made it into the educational mainstream. They don't teach us this stuff. They teach us Darwinism. They teach us out of Africa theories. Will nothing be done in this country to preserve what remains of the ancient American civilization? Won't somebody do something about that? That's what we've been doing all these years, right? Of that civilization which seems to have been the fountainhead at which the philosophers of all nations, this is the motherland, the fountainhead of all the philosophers of all nations in the remotest antiquity, have come to acquire knowledge and drink inspiration from the learning and wisdom of the Maya sages, all right? The real ancient Nagas. The Maya sages. That's who everybody learned from. The gods from the lands of the West. You hearing? Are you guys paying attention? Americans have established in Athens schools for the study of Greek archaeology, in Alexandria for the decipherment of the inscriptions carved on the walls of the temples, on the obelisk and in the papyri found in the tombs of Egypt, is it not time that students in the United States shall direct their attention to the ancient history of the continent on which they live? Talking about here in the Americas, why don't they pay more attention to their own land? All right, instead of being Pan Africans, it is not altogether lost, and the tongue in which it is written is not a dead language. Maya is one of the oldest forms of speech, all right? Koval, if not anterior to Sanskrit, all right? Before Sanskrit, the names Alpha, Beta, Gamma, etc., of the letters of the Greek alphabet form a curious epic poem in that language, okay? All right? It's part of a poem in the Maya, ancient Maya script, those letters. There are many interesting inscriptions in it that only await decipherment to illumine the past records of the race in America. Many of these precious documents exist in the city of New York. They will reveal the history of the mighty nations that have dwelt on this western continent. They will tell us of the origin of many of our primitive traditions. If we start really breaking down the history of the Mayas, we will start learning a lot of the primitive traditions of the earth. He's letting you know the origin of it. Why then not found in Yucatan, in the midst of the ruins of the temples, a colleges of the learned priesthood of Mayaks, a school where students of American archaeology can learn with their language what the Maya sages knew of man's origins, of his intellectual development, of the past of their people, of the colonists they sent to other parts of the world, where they carried the arts, sciences, and religion of the mother country. All right, here, America, the mother country, guys, are you paying attention? And its civilization from which our own is descended. All of the rest are descended from this one. Why don't they build schools of learning about this? Why? He's asking, why? After 12 years of incessant labors and great hardships, unaided by any government or scientific society, right? He did his own funding, he did his own archaeological expeditions, all right? Having to encounter opposition and surmount countless difficulties placed maliciously in our way by those whose duty it should have been to afford us all protection, robbed of our finds by the Mexican government. Right? They took all the artifacts he found, which has even refused to indemnify us for the money expended in making these discoveries. Mrs. Leplejon and myself, after saving from destruction many important documents and relics, have at least found a key that will unlock the door of that chamber of mysteries. Shall it be allowed to remain closed much longer? Come on, guys. Like, Augustus Leplejon was like an Indiana Jones. Like, he's really out there finding this stuff. He found this famous statue of Prince Cole. It's in the Mexican National Museum of Anthropology. Like, the National Museum, it's one of their most famous pieces they took from him. They never paid him for any of the stuff he himself paid for, go on this expedition and get all these artifacts and decipher. All this he's breaking down because he did all that for 12 years, guys. What did he find out? He's letting you know, guys, listen, that America is the true old world, that the Maya are one of the mother cultures and founders of wisdom and religious practices and primitive traditions around the world. That's what he found out, and that's why you don't know about him. They took all his stuff. All right? We have lifted, in part at least, the veil that has hung so long over the history of mankind in America in remote ages. Shall it be allowed to fall again? Are we going to keep allowing this to happen, guys? Look, this is him asking more than 100 years ago, way more. 120, almost 130 years ago, 170. I'm sorry, 40 years ago, something like that. He's letting, are we going to continue to let this happen? Are we going to let it fall again? Will no efforts be made by American students? Come on, you are the American, right? By men of wealth and leisure in the United States to remove it altogether? Yeah, so this is what Trump should be focusing on, right? And all these people of power, right? And that's where the book ends, guys. He's literally left it at a question. He left the open-ended question at the end of his book, like, is this the end? And look what happened. Look what happened. We don't know. We never learned about Augustus Leprechaun and what he found and what he realized. This was a deep book, guys, right? We read the whole book. We read the whole book. All right. Goes into the index. As you guys can see, we read the whole book. And the index is very long. The index is very long. Again, this was the book Sacred Mysteries Among the Mayas and the Quiches, 11,500 years ago. Their relation to the sacred mysteries of Egypt, Greece, Chaldea, and India. Freemasonry in times anterior to the Temple of Solomon. Illustrated by Augustus Leprechaun. This was from 1886. And I just want to congratulate you guys, pat yourself on the back. You have read another book, man. Congratulations. Like, we're going through these books, right? And again, I'll leave you with the open-ended question. How long before the world realizes and does something about to fix the real history, right? To get the real history out. And America's role in the ancient world and literally in the world in general, right? How long, how much more? Again, shout out to Augustus Leprechaun and shout out to you for watching all these videos and reading along with me. I hope you enjoyed the reading of this book. Let's add it to all the other research we have done in the last 8 years. You know, how much longer? How much longer will we do something about it, huh? The so-called American student or American Indian, huh? Or indigenous person or just American, right? The real American. How much longer? You did it again. You read another book, okay? You read another book. And I appreciate you guys sticking around all the way to the end and reading this book with me. All these parts, previous parts, and everything, okay? Thank you for that. Thank you for all the support, and I hope you enjoyed it. America's the true old world, period. The truth will come out soon. Much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Hawa.